Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining AED's New Wave of Tech Talent webinar. Please be sure to use the questions function to submit any questions you have for the panelists. And I'd now like to turn it over to our director, Telly Tucker.
Good morning. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. My name is Telly Tucker. I'm the director of Arlington Economic Development. And my job is to welcome you on behalf of Arlington Economic Development. AED, as we affectionately call it, we're dedicated to the preservation and enhancement of economically competitive and sustainable community and the creation of exciting, diverse, and amenity-rich places. What that means is we want to continue to promote Arlington as a place for businesses to thrive, people to live, and visitors to come and play. We recognize that tech talent is an important factor for companies to locate and expand their operations in Arlington. And so as such, AED wanted to provide a dedicated session to discuss the ongoing and future initiatives to further advance our talent pipeline initiatives for companies and for small startups alike. We also have in mind our large corporate entities and certainly want to make sure that we're continue to provide the talent for them as well. This webinar will provide a brief presentation on CBRE's 2020 Scoring Tech Talent Report provided by our presenter and moderator, Ian Anderson. Following the presentation, we will have a dynamic panel discussion about the available resources for tech companies, attracting and retaining talent, initiatives leveling up tech talent, best practices for sourcing tech talent, and the future of attracting and retaining tech talent in Arlington County and in the Northern Virginia region. Ian Anderson is the Senior Director of Research and Analysis at CBRE and is based in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. In CBRE's 2020 Scoring Tech Talent Report, the Metro Washington, D.C. region ranked number 2, providing a testament to our talent-rich region in the area with investments in strategic initiatives, programs, and higher education to attract and retain our talent in the region. So without further ado, I introduce Ian.
Hey, thanks, Telly. I'm going to assume everybody can hear me as well, and I'm going to share my presentation here with you. So give me a moment to just pivot to that. What I'm going to present over the next 5 to 10 minutes is our 2020 Scoring Tech Talent Report. And again, just make sure if no one can see my screen or if you're not looking at the first page saying 2020 Scoring Tech Talent, just yell out, let me know. But this is CBRE Research's premier, probably most widely recognized and used research report that we create. And essentially, it helps our clients do 3 main things. 1, it identifies the largest pools of technical talent or clusters around the United States for company growth. 2, it helps them, our clients, helps them find out how much that talent costs in each of those clusters. And then thirdly, it identifies what the future pipeline is of that talent in terms of graduates from local colleges and universities for, again, long-term growth of their businesses. So what we do in this report, we analyze 50 US and Canadian markets for 20 different technical occupations within those markets. And what makes this report a little bit different is that what we do in this labor analysis of all of these markets is we're looking at what people do for a living rather than what industry they're in. So we are looking for technical talent, no matter what industry exists, whether they work for a tech company or for the federal government or for a university. We just want to know the bulk, all that tech talent that any company can access. So when we do it in those terms, you can see that tech talent is present across a wide variety of industries. So obviously, as you can tell by this pie chart showing the composition of tech talent in industries in the United States, the majority of tech talent lies in core high-tech industries, about 37%. But tech talent obviously exists in other industries, from education, healthcare, finance, insurance, real estate, et cetera. So it's across a broad array of industries. And again, it's just not limited to the tech industry. And so when we look at it from this perspective, from this broader perspective of talent as opposed to people working for just tech companies, you see that the Washington, D.C. region, this is the district, this is suburban Maryland, this is Northern Virginia, offers quite a compelling value proposition to companies looking to expand. So the Washington, D.C. region actually has the third largest amount of tech talent of any market in the United States in terms of these. And in fact, if you wanted to stretch a little bit to add Baltimore, which is another 80,000 approximately in terms of tech talent, we're not far behind, in fact, the San Francisco Bay Area. And when we look a little bit more granularly, and I would suggest and recommend to anyone who perhaps hasn't seen our report or is more interested, you can go to the website for 2020 CBRE Scoring Tech Talent, and it has a tech talent analyzer. So it's kind of an online mapping system you can see, and you can create kind of maps what you're looking at right here, one of which is where the tech talent lives. And this is people who occupy one of these 20 technical occupations. And so you can see the density of tech talent here, significant density and propensity towards the younger population within the district, about 43,000. Within the Beltway, we're looking at about 123,000 of tech talent. You can obviously see the strong dots in Roslyn and Ballston, and obviously in the National Landing area as well. And then to the west, you can see around Reston and the toll road, the significant cluster here. And so when we look at it this way as well, it helps our clients see where they may want to locate, where potential employees or current employees can get to. But it also shows, when we look at it is that the Washington, D.C. metro region is slowly but surely following the San Francisco Bay Area's geography of tech talent, in that in one cluster, you have a low density traditional hotbed of the tech industry in the region, which is out on the toll road in Reston in Northern Virginia. And you might make an analogy of that to San Jose, lower density in the Bay Area. And then you have this urban cluster, kind of a triangle if you look at it there, which is on one point is the district, a lot of tech talent there. You also see along the Roslyn-Ballston corridor, another hotbed, and then into the National Landing area, another talent. And that's kind of our urban cluster. And with that, that's somewhat analogous to the city of San Francisco. And so that is one part of our analysis that we take into account, is the amount of tech talent, where that lives within the region. And that's one criteria we make in evaluating all 50 of these markets in terms of the tech talent they offer to the industry. And based on 13 of these criteria, one of which is the level of tech talent, but it's also in the growth of that talent, it's in the concentration of the total labor force, it's in the amount of R&D spending within the region. The Washington, D.C. region ranked number 2 out of all of these 50 markets in our latest report. And that was actually an increase from number 4 in the previous year. A lot of that was due to an increase in the hiring and the growth of the local tech talent workforce. And so what we started to see, and this does not include any effects of COVID-19 in 2020, but what we started to see in 2019 was not only the larger economy of Washington, D.C. start to regain some momentum, but we also started to see that in the tech industry. And as a result, Washington, D.C. has a pretty envious ranking of number 2. And a lot of that has to do with, as I mentioned, the size. We looked at that. It also has to do with the recent growth. But in fact, over the past 5 years, you're looking at the amount of workforce or tech talent growth over the past 5 years. In fact, DC is generally speaking, a larger area, generally speaking, lagged a lot of these other markets in terms of growth. And that's a little bit of indicative of the local economy. But again, we started to ramp up pre-COVID, so we were starting to gain some momentum, but it was lagging behind some of these other markets. But nonetheless, where DC, Northern Virginia, the larger region, really begin to shine is one in the amount of talent that's being churned out by local colleges and universities, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But what you're looking at here is the amount of tech degree completions by metro area in 2019. You can see Washington, DC, larger region, number 2 in the nation, which is significant. And as great as that is, and you could look at this either positively or negatively, but we are producing an abundance of talents in this region. But unfortunately, we still have been marked as a, quote, brain drain market. And so what you're looking at here is markets in terms of the amount of jobs they added in 2019 versus the amount of graduates, tech graduates, they graduated into the local workforce. And so in short, on the left-hand side, you see that the San Francisco Bay Area, in fact, had a gain of 52,000 roughly more jobs than they had local tech graduates come into the local labor force. And so with that dynamic, they need to continue to import talent into the Bay Area to keep that tech engine growing. Conversely, on the right-hand side, you see these brain drain markets, and these are markets that are producing more talent than there are local jobs. And as a result, Boston is the worst, where they're just producing so many local graduates from local universities with tech degrees that aren't able to get jobs. They go to other markets. As you can see, the Washington, D.C. region is another contributor to that as well. So we do have that dynamic, which puts us a little bit on our heels. However, that's also one reason that the tech industry is continuing to go to markets like Washington, D.C. and expand. So again, if you go again to if you want to take a look at our report or even go online and check some of this out, we've created these what we might call flight maps. And this shows over the last 5 years, existing tech companies headquartered in the San Francisco Bay Area that have expanded into other major markets around the United States in terms of and leased office commercial real estate space. And as you can see, the Washington, D.C. region continues to be a destination for a lot of these tech companies expanding. And if you go online, you can see a similar dynamic of companies emanating from Seattle and even New York and going to Washington. Why are they doing this? They're doing this because, in fact, we have so many graduates coming out of our local colleges and universities. It continues to be an attraction, especially considering the ambitious growth objectives of a lot of these tech companies. So, but it's not just that attracts a lot of companies. What you're looking at here is a typical operating cost, annual operating cost for a tech company. So what we did is we took a supposed 500 person tech company. We looked at how many typical wages they might have to pay and what their office rent might be. So these would be annual operating costs across all these different markets. You can see Washington is fairly high up there, 4th highest cost market. However, you do see a considerable difference in cost compared to the Bay Area as well. And it's not that much considerably higher than some of those markets just after. You'll also notice in this on the more lower cost market on the right-hand side are a lot of those Canadian markets. And if you follow some of the growth in the tech industry, you would know that there is a lot of momentum in a lot of those Canadian markets for growth of tech talent as well too. So we do offer somewhat of a favorable value proposition in terms of costs for companies to operate here, lower costs. But it's also when you look at talent and attracting talent and bringing them to the region, this is where the value proposition can become even more apparent. And so on the left-hand side, you do look at the least affordable markets in terms of average apartment rents for the region. So maybe we'll hear from Brian too, or someone, if you're trying to attract someone to go to Manhattan, work in Manhattan for a tech company, it's arguably a much more favorable proposition to have somebody come to Washington with fairly lower costs, living costs, to join a company in our region as opposed to Manhattan or some of these higher prices. So that is another favorable element and one reason and one metric we track for evaluating all the criteria for these markets. So all in all, with that, DC offers a generally favorable value proposition in terms of costs. It is generating significant talent, and so we have it #2 in our current tech talent scorecard ranking. And so what I thought I'd do now is just pivot then to some of our panelists here. If I can get myself off my screen, everybody else may want to join me here. And maybe we can begin a panel discussion as to how Washington, D.C. can maintain that #2 ranking, or maybe perhaps someday get to #1. And so I'll just let the other panelists introduce themselves, and we'll just go, if everyone's screen is looking like mine, or no, you are looking at my screen, I think. But we'll start with you, Steve, if you will, maybe introduce yourself and we'll go around. Thanks.
Sure, I'm Steve Partridge. I'm the Vice President of Strategic Partnerships and Workforce Innovation at Northern Virginia Community College. We are the largest community college in the Commonwealth of Virginia and the second largest in the nation.
And Liza?
Hi, it's great to be here. I'm Liza Wilson-Durant, and I'm Associate Provost for Strategic Initiatives and Community Engagement at George Mason University, and I also serve as an Associate Dean in the Volgenos School, and I'm the Director of the Northern Virginia node of the Commonwealth Cyber Initiative.
Brian?
Hi, I'm Brian Reilly, Head of Talent Acquisition Programs for Amazon's HQ2 in Arlington, Virginia, and also lead talent pipeline development for AWS, which is focused on our upskilling initiatives within the organization. And I've been with Amazon for about 6 years. Thanks, Ian.
Brian, things are pretty slow for you lately, I imagine, right?
You might think so, but no, they're not. Thank you.
Okay, Carolyn, and lastly, but not least.
Hi, I'm Carolyn Perrant. Thanks for having me. I'm the CEO of LiveSafe. We are a mobile safety platform software tech company headquartered in Arlington in Roslyn, and it's delighted to be here. I'm also on the board of NVTC and was co-chair of Go Virginia, which is a big initiative by the state for the Tech Talent Pipeline Initiative.
Okay, great. So let's find out how we can move up to #1 perhaps, or what we're doing to move up to #1 in our ranking. Steve, let me start with you. Let me ask you, what are some of the resources, tech community infrastructure that you see currently helping companies not only retain, but attract a lot of this tech talent and help us grow in the future?
Yeah, I think Virginia's been very forward thinking on sort of developing new talent. I think from the Amazon project, we learned a lot about, yes, we have the talent, but how do we keep growing it to meet the demand from Amazon and other companies? So I think it was mentioned by Carolyn, just the Tech Talent Pipeline Initiative at the state level to invest additional dollars in our university system and our community college, where NOVA is part of it, to really grow the number of computer science graduates, because that's obviously one of the fields that is in high demand. But we're also seeing investment in other tracks as well beyond computer science. I think everyone thinks that the only way into a tech job is to get a computer science degree, and that's really not the case. And so we've done a lot in the past couple years, thanks to Go Virginia and others, to really increase awareness of what these jobs are and what it takes to get into them. A lot of high school advisors don't realize that if you're not math oriented, there's still great paying jobs in cybersecurity and other IT jobs, but they're often not the ones with the real knowledge. So we work with employers to get that data into the schools to make sure our K-12 system is advising our future workforce better. We know these stackable credentials. I think this area more than anywhere else in the country is probably guilty of sort of the over degree. You've got a lot of smart people in this area, and everyone thinks the only way to get into these jobs is to go and complete your degree first and then go back and get the job. Where I think some companies like Amazon and others are starting to rethink that model, maybe apprenticeship, where you get a series of credentials that have credit that you can transfer into a degree program down the road, but really get your foot in the door to try out those jobs without taking all this student debt on. So I think we've done a really good job to kind of put the pieces in place. I still think we have a long way to go though until we can kind of keep up with that demand, because again, the The job market's changing a lot. The type of people moving into our market come with different skills than what was in the past. So we've got to do a lot more in the K-12 and the career awareness and all at the university level, because we have a lot of people that graduate with degrees from GMU and other institutions that end up back in Nova classrooms sometimes getting these credentials and certificates because they realize maybe that English degree or that history degree wasn't what the market really needed right now. They needed some of those tech skills. So we need better career advising, better pathways for individuals to figure out how to get into these high demand jobs.
What are some of the other degrees besides, you mentioned that not everyone needs a computer science degree. Is there one off the top of your head that you think of that's overlooked? That
I think cybersecurity is probably the one in our region that is probably the most in demand. And part of that is because we don't see a lot of women moving into that field. If anything, we see, I think it's about less than 10% of the workforce currently is held by women. And you think about the number of jobs, you see it on TV every day about cyber attacks, breaches, more and more of those jobs are growing because it used to be more of a government type of job, and now banks and every company needs cybersecurity specialists. So the demand is really outstripped supply, but we're just not seeing the growth of that within the female population. So we've got to do a lot more to really educate people. What are the jobs available? What are the skill sets? And really make them interesting and fun sounding. A lot of these jobs, you really can't tell what they do. And so getting businesses to come into schools virtually to share kind of what is a day in the life of a cybersecurity specialist would be very helpful. And I think more employer engagement in education is critical.
Liza, how about you? What current initiatives or resources do you see working particularly well?
Well, before I answer that question, let me also throw out that we're seeing a lot of interest in cloud computing, the new degree that we developed with Nova that supports AWS, Amazon. So I just want to give a shout out to those who are studying cloud computing as being one of those emerging areas of great interest. Yeah, I think, the Commonwealth has been very forward thinking, as Steve mentioned. The Commonwealth Cyber Initiative is about $20 million investment per year in the development of cybersecurity research, cybersecurity workforce, and cybersecurity entrepreneurs. And what it's done is really brought all the universities in the Commonwealth around really trying to establish Virginia as a global center of excellence in cybersecurity so that we can be sort of the East Coast or maybe the nation or global draw for cybersecurity. And really highlighting the tremendous number of companies, both large and small, including entrepreneurs, who are engaged in this area. And then we hope will also attract more talent to the region in cybersecurity. We're investing in programs, like Steve said, around K through 12. Building that pipeline that begins in kindergarten is really important so that we widen the pipeline. We can't just rely on those who have raised their hand in high school and said they're interested in tech careers. We've really got to push that back. So the Commonwealth Cyber Initiative is making those kinds of investments in pipeline, as well as the wraparound services to support entrepreneurs that build new companies, and then also trying to move all that great research that all the Virginia institutions of higher ed are doing, trying to move that out of the lab and into the commercial market to, again, build new companies. So I think, we're leading in that area and really looking for additional matching dollars to support CCI from industry, from federal government, so we can just amplify our impact.
So, Brian or Carolyn, you can jump in as well too, but I was going to throw it back at you, perhaps both a little bit too, is that, well, a couple things. Do you see in terms of the cybersecurity space, do you notice that, other markets particularly maybe holding an edge than ours locally, where you may be losing people to? And then secondly, are there any other regions or areas that you are, I don't want to call it envious, but you see they're doing things really sharply that you'd like to emulate?
Yeah, I think there's certain regions, obviously they're really great out there. I mean, if you look at the Miami area, Florida as a whole has been really good at making sure everything in higher ed is very stackable. Where Virginia, it's a little more like the Wild West. Sometimes we have to work very closely with our peer institutions like GMU, and we've built a great program called Advance that makes it very clear when students leave high school and go to Nova that what is their pathway. They don't lose any credits along the way. But that took a lot of intentional development, where in states like Florida, where they've kind of made it state law, it's a little more built into everything they do. And so they get the kind of results they're looking for at scale, where we have to really spend a lot more man hours reaching out to each other to really make sure that happens. So I think if we could do a lot more in aligning that pathway work would be really great.
And so Carolyn, yeah, go ahead, Brian.
I was just going to add, I think what Steve and Liza were pointing out around the cloud computing degree programs is really important, because that's one of the most, when we think about like the multitude of reasons that we've come to the region, I mean, that's one of many. And so the sort of intuition of NOVA and GMU to institute programs like that, which we believe will feed not only Amazon's pipeline for hiring in the future, because with the growth of AWS, that business will see significant growth here, as well as others. It will not just help us support like our future hiring initiatives, but it will help our customers support their future hiring initiatives. We deploy, a large organization of consultants that go out and work with all of our customers, and so that's helping us develop an ecosystem here locally that not just Amazon but other companies will be able to tap into in order to help grow their tech ecosystem here in the region as well. So I think that's the mention of that's just a really virtuous cycle that I wanted to make sure to call out, because it's really important to us and it will be really important to our customers.
So Carolyn, what about what kind of strategic initiatives, kind of like Virginia Tech's Talent Pipeline Initiative or others that are currently being implemented or have been implemented that you see as being pivotal to assisting and retaining a lot of that talent and good for the region long term?
Well, I think the combination of our region is really unique. You have a lot of veterans that are coming out of government, and I think you see a lot of the universities, Northern Virginia Community College, NVTC, doing things to help vets get redirected into technical skill sets. And that's opened up tremendous opportunities from a workforce perspective. I think a lot of the large government contractors that were professional services companies have been doing a lot of education within their own entities, and that expands the capabilities, from a job perspective. And then, Go Virginia has spent a lot of time looking at this. They've been at this for 5 years, tens of millions of dollars, looking at multiple different programs, both from K-12, early education, and how do you track this into community colleges, into universities. To me, the biggest, thing that's transformed in the past 2.5 years, and I look to my left and say, thank you, Amazon, is everybody had to look at when Amazon came in, we couldn't just keep stealing from each other, right? So government contractors would constantly be, I'm going to get my workforce, which meant I'm taking it from your workforce. We had to get the pool bigger. And with Amazon coming in, there were clearly not enough people with the right skill set. So you see Go Virginia, the Tech Talent Pipeline, NVTC, sponsoring things, the local community colleges and universities, the expansion with Virginia Tech, by the Amazon, HQ, all of these educational organizations and businesses kind of coming together almost ahead of government mandating it and saying we collectively have to solve this challenge from a tech talent perspective. I think that has really been a huge initiative the past 3 or 4 years. And a lot of it, I think, was the impetus of we want to win Amazon's business because we think it can be just a huge, wonderful thing for our region, but that will have also opportunity and repercussions, and how do we support that? So to me, those are some of the things that have come along. And just when you talk to people, they're all talking about the tech talent pipeline, whereas 5 years ago that wasn't really the vernacular, and now everybody's taking a little piece of ownership, whether you're a corporate entity, whether you're a university in the education space, whether you're K through 12, whether you're a government agency. I think those things have really brought people together to help collectively, because I think there's tremendous growth for our region.
I was wondering, Brian or Carolyn, do you have any specific, if you were to make a wish list, you see something happening in other regions that would help private industry that you'd like to see here integrated more here, you've seen elsewhere?
Yeah, I would say.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I think I actually like the uniqueness of the region, in the sense of it's not the Bay Area, and it's not, having worked in Seattle with Amazon for 4 years, it's not Seattle. There are pros and cons, I think, about any region that you look at. But I think, Amazon's an evolving business, and so the willingness of local educational institutions to partner with us to develop the right types of degrees. Carolyn's mention of the military community is extremely important to us. So Steve mentioned apprenticeship programs earlier. So I lead our apprenticeship efforts for AWS, and it's on a year-over-year basis. While it's not as large as some of our campus recruiting pipelines and some of our typical industry recruiting pipelines, it's becoming more and more important. And the reason for that is, again, I'm citing everyone's points, but trying to pull it together, that we're trying to create a larger tech community. And so we're leveraging apprenticeships to upskill folks who are, military veterans, or folks who may come from community college, and we need to just kind of build a bridge into the types of roles that we need. And so our goal at this point in this region is certainly to hire from some of the longstanding four-year institutions who develop great tech talent, to hire great tech talent, from other organizations and vice versa. But we're also trying to innovate in ways that helps us produce broader tech talent pools here in this region with institutions and organizations who have been willing to partner with us. And that's something we actually hope to take back to other regions and say, look, this is what we've learned based on some of the work that we've done here in the DC area. We've got these programs that work to develop a broader talent pool. And now we can take these into markets like the Bay Area or Seattle, where there's a pretty heavy saturation of tech talent and really high competition, and say, here are some alternatives you can use to develop more tech talent in the region, and maybe some of the places that you haven't been looking. So that's how I would answer that. Sorry, Carolyn.
And I would, oh no, not at all. It's a great point. And I would answer childcare. I think one of the burning issues is going to be, as you see a lot of these young, my niece is graduating from Maryland. She's coming to Arlington. She's going to work for Amazon. My daughter's graduating from Virginia Tech. She's going to work for Apple. We have a very young, vibrant community in Arlington, in particular. And one of the things that we're going to need over the next 3 to 5 years is more childcare, both early, young under 3, and then after school types of programs, because I think the local K through 12 schools are stretched very, very thin, and working parents, when there's any kind of a blip, are going to need that kind of support. And I think being able to come up with affordable, easily accessible ways for families to cover, I think is going to be very, very important. And if you're a big company like an Amazon, there's a lot of optionality. Some of our our larger organizations have daycare on site and stipends and that type of thing. But for the entrepreneurs and the smaller businesses, for the workforce, and to have people come in, this is going to be, I think, a very important issue over the next 3 to 5, 7 years in the region, as as the workforce ages, has kids, and is looking from a lifestyle, family, that perspective. And New York is doing a lot more in that area. I think, from a retention perspective, in New York City is starting to really invest in some of these things. Boston has done a pretty good job, and I just think it's something that DC hasn't really put on the radar yet.
Yeah, great point, and obviously very applicable, especially with the times we're living in right now, people leaving the labor force because of childcare issues, et cetera. Let's maybe pivot back to Steve and Liza about the brain drain. I mean, that seems to get a lot of traction, a lot of press, big concern. Like, it's a big problem. I guess there's 2 different ways of looking at it. But where do you see this being solved, if you will? Are there any other initiatives, any other efforts we can make to try and close that gap? Do you think we're moving in the right direction? Are we just are we laying the seeds right now that'll come to fruition in the next few years?
Well, that's a great question. One that we spend, Steve and I lose sleep over this all the time. We're really thinking too about the impact of the pandemic too. So, there's all that we've been talking about, and then overlay COVID-19 on top of all of that. We've been doing a lot of thinking about how to prepare for the post-pandemic economy. We know that unemployment hit an all-time high in Virginia, around 10+% in April. There's some 250,000 unemployed people right now. They have great skills. But they may not have these skills that are most needed for the jobs that are open, the kinds of jobs that we're talking about. So, for example, at Mason, we're working hard to look at our micro-credentialing effort. looking to partner with companies to find out specifically what micro credentials they need. And what I mean by that are short amounts of learning. So Steve alluded to this earlier. Not everybody needs a degree. And even those with degrees don't need a second degree, but they might need a suite of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 courses. Maybe it's only 90 days of training that will bring them, let's say, from a cybersecurity network person to a cloud person. And so we're working hard to look at companies, matching them with micro credentials. And at Mason, we're developing what's called the Mason Talent Exchange, where we're actually providing resume help, trying to make those matches. So it's one thing to get the critical skills, but then actually finding the job, resume reviews, coaching, success coaching, and then scholarships so that people can quickly upskill and move into the post-pandemic economy. So that's really our focus right now in areas like IT and cybersecurity, project management, government contracting, facilities management, and even paralegal. Those are some of the areas that we're focused on that we know are in high demand now. And I know Steve has similar initiatives that, you know, complement what we're doing.
Yeah, Ian, I think one of the big things that are always challenged for anyone in an economy in transition is sort of, one, how do I pay for that? And two, if I can get the money to pay for it, am I picking the right thing? And so we've got a team at Nova that does nothing but look at that labor market analytics and talk with employers to really make sure that when we're advising our students about these are the jobs, and we know this short-term training will get you that foot in the door, that we're advising them correctly. The other way is how to pay for it, which the Commonwealth has a great program called Fast Forward. It actually buys down the cost of high demand credentials. So AWS has a suite of credentials. So someone maybe who has some IT experience, but maybe hasn't been back in the classroom in a long time, maybe lost their job, but we can quickly reskill them because the cost of that training, let's say it's a $3,000 class, that only costs the individual $1,000 now. The Commonwealth pays us when the student completes part of the money, and when they sit for and only pass that certification do we finally get paid. So it's a pay for performance from the Commonwealth built into this program. And there's financial aid for that first third for individuals who may have lost their job and need that extra help, which is different. Usually there's a lot of stimulus money that comes in during a recession that quickly helps put people back to work, but we didn't see that this time. Our local workforce boards, there's been no additional WIOA funding in mass coming into our system. So that's been a struggle. So this fast forward funding is really all that's out there in addition to some CARES Act funding that's been put out there.
Let's maybe switch quickly to a little bit more of the current environment. So COVID-19, obviously, I hate to use the term unprecedented, but I got to say it. There's no other word right for it. Unprecedented times what we're going through here, highly unusual. I guess a couple things. One, you know, Brian, you're on the front lines. You're trying to bring talent to the region. Were you coming up with any new innovative ways of assessing talent or bringing them here, and maybe a little bit more broadly, what's the value proposition you offer for DC versus some of these other places?
Yeah, I mean, I think the key in the pandemic has been to maintain a sense of flexibility. There are a lot of different people dealing with a lot of different things during this time, and so there's not a one size fits all solution. And we haven't, as a company, and because we want to be really thoughtful about it, we haven't sort of put a stake in the ground about, you know, is the future 100% virtual? Is it hybrid? Is it in person? We don't know, but we've continued with our construction plans in Arlington. We're continuing forward as if we'll occupy the same space that we've been planning for, and as of right now, that's sort of what we're working towards. At the same time, we have instituted the flexibility for employees in roles who are able to do so to work from home at least through the end of June 2021. And we've sort of looked at that on a quarter by quarter basis. But again, the key has been to remain really flexible, and that's to, you know, there are people who need to be at home, and so having the flexibility, whether it's around work hours, or we've instituted new policies around, to Carolyn's point earlier, childcare, like getting in-home childcare at the last minute when you need it. You know, we're starting to support some of that for families because we know every situation is unique. Now, there are others who have the perspective that it's better to be in an office to get work done. And so for those employees, we're also trying to provide the safest work environment possible. We haven't shut down our offices, and so if employees want to be there, we want to support that as well. And so we're trying our best to provide things like temperature checks and masks and social distancing protocols and all the things that we need to do in the office in order for people to be able to work there as well. And so I think the key again has been remaining flexible until we know a little bit more definitively like where all of this is going to land. So we try to project that.
Would you like to take any bets on when that'll happen? You all have some certainty?
I don't know. We'll see. Let's hope so. But you know, the other thing is we've tried to project that in our attraction strategy, meaning we get a lot of questions during the interview process about what's the future of work at Amazon, and will it be an in-person work environment or will it be virtual? And the only thing we can do is really be authentic in that we don't know the answer to those questions right now, but what we do know is we're trying to provide employees the work environment they need in order to be successful. And you know, at the same time, we've instituted a lot of initiatives like video interviewing, and we've even got some stuff up on our career site now around how to be successful in a video interview. And so we're sort of trying to take these additional steps to really think forward about what does it mean to work in a virtual environment, what does it mean to work in a hybrid environment, and what does it mean to work in an in-person environment, knowing what we know now and what does that translate into in the future. So but I think flexibility has been the key, and really meeting the employee where they're at in order to either attract new employees who are dealing with a varied set of circumstances, or to retain current employees who are doing the same.
Carolyn, similar experience yourself, or?
Yes, I think you have to have empathy. You know, it's not just the working parents who are the ones that I was incredibly concerned with. We have a lot of people that have aging parents. We have a lot of our workforce that moved home with their family. You know, they went back to Indiana, or they went back up to New Hampshire. They were living in apartments in the city, and they're like, I don't want to, you know, be there. Or they were living in a situation with multiple roommates, and it was almost impossible for them. And so exact same thing with Brian. I mean, obviously we're on a much smaller scale, but we had, well, the office is open, people can go in, we have, you know, safe policies, but we're not putting any pressure on any of our employees, you know, in terms of coming back into the office. And I think that it really is the frontline managers that have got to reach out, HR and exec leadership, and everyone's doing what they can, but everybody's situation is very, very unique. And what I think employees really want to hear is that you hear me, you care, you understand, and that you're supportive. We're seeing in our platform, because we get tips and communications across employees and university students, enormous amounts of mental health. The long tail on this thing is the stress level and the mental health that this is putting, you know, I think on everyone, you know, of every age bracket. So from a recruiting perspective, we've actually done recruiting with the completely open-ended. We have a spot for you in the Arlington office when things come up, but if you want to stay and work remote for the foreseeable future, we're enabling you to do that. And we kind of feel like once the world shifts and people are more comfortable coming into offices, then we can get back to driving the culture. And we've been using, you know, our culture has really helped bind people and have them pull together during this challenging time. And when people have been interviewing, because we have been hiring, they see that, you know, and they talk to employees and they feel like there's some unity. Very difficult to onboard new employees and make them feel that culture when they haven't physically met anyone, when they haven't been able to have any kind of connectivity, and when everybody's kind of afraid. So I think that's something else that if you're looking to recruit people in, you know, you have to spend a lot of time and attention on. And it's a lot of over communication. You got to carve out your regular day job. A big chunk of it has to come on how is your workforce doing and what level of support can you give them.
So let's try and gauge what do you foresee that, you know, everyone, a lot of people were being very flexible. You've got maybe employees around the country perhaps right now. What do you think? Is there a threat? And maybe I'll start with Steve and Liza. Maybe you're speaking with the talent being generated right now, but do you see any threat to Arlington's future of creating this tech cluster, because maybe sentiment has shifted to where the employees are like, I don't want to go back to Washington. I don't want to be there. I can do my work from, as we've mentioned, Asheville, Boise, what have you. Is that real? Just a passing fad? I mean, I feel like we said this in 1999 when, with more accessibility to the internet, you could do your work anywhere. But Steve or Liza, maybe first, do you see any of that shift now? maybe people wanting to go elsewhere or wanting more flexibility for students in the future to do their work where they want?
I think actually this has been a great time of opportunity for universities to imagine what and how they'll teach the student of the future. I think there's always going to be a need for experiential learning, for hands-on learning, to get your hands and head around the equipment and to engage. The research enterprise requires people to do together. We believe that innovation happens from a diversity of thought being collectively together in spaces. So I think, you know, we don't see universities changing or colleges changing the way they do business, but we are being more flexible to accommodate all living learning styles and needs. So that whether that means distance learning, hybrid learning, faculty in person, away, together, we're committed to meeting all those needs. And actually, thanks to the Amazon HQ2 deal and the Tech Talent Investment Program, $900 million the Commonwealth is investing in the universities throughout the entire Commonwealth. We're putting those resources to good use, hiring faculty and building infrastructure that will support cyber infrastructure for learning, just as I've described, you know, and not in the short term. We're looking at a 20-year horizon. You know, this is a long-term venture for us in the Commonwealth and with our industry partners to build something. You know, for us at Mason, it's the Institute for Digital Innovation headquarters at Arlington. That'll be sort of the nexus of all that we do in digital innovation, with industry partners in place, with Nova, with the K through 12 set, all together. So we see it as opportunity. It's a little unclear how it will all gel together, but that's the exciting part about innovation. We don't know what the final answer will be just yet.
And I'll echo what Liza said. I think the different modalities, you now have more individuals that have different options than maybe we didn't offer in the past, both for employees and for the students. But I think it for Arlington in particular, I think having this technology prove itself in prime time, I think gives us and gives employers more options, either with a surge workforce or as they start to grow. We know there's only so much land in Arlington. You can't keep building up forever. And so giving companies a choice to be able to bring in good talent and not have them relocate, maybe that's an option for certain positions. But if you look at a lot of the survey data, both from employer data, you see national data, student data, a lot of people want to come back. They miss that interaction. They miss a place to go. As you said, you know, sometimes they have roommates at home, sometimes they have kids that's going on. So this idea that everyone's just going to go remote and never want to come back, I think is you know, a little much of a pipe dream. I think we'll see people wanting to come back to the office.
I hope we didn't lose Carolyn there, but there she is. Okay.
No, I'm back. I'm back. I would just add that I think when the restaurants are open, when the theaters are open, when the culture and the things that, you know, the community is open, you know, in Arlington, people will want to come back and be a part of that. I think what you're seeing is people saying, well, if I can't tap in and take advantage of the Broadway shows, the theater, the, you know, all of the things that made it vibrant, it has lost appeal for me to be there. But this will pass, and when those things do come open, I absolutely think the draw will be there for you know, for people wanting to come back and be a part of that community. People loved it before, and nothing, you know, nothing is different, you know, once everything reopens. So I actually don't think you'll see everybody wanting to live in Idaho and not come back to the things that made the region great will reopen, and that culture. And with Amazon coming in, there's going to be incubators and more startups, and over the next 10 years you're going to see this, you know, amazing accelerator, and people are going to want to be a part of that.
Yeah, and just to add on this sentiment, I think, you know, tech talent was one of the reasons we came to the region. So I think there's that. And then I also think, you know, one of the things that probably, I don't think that it gets overlooked, but this region is so, like, from a historical perspective, from a cultural perspective, the region is highly diverse. There are tons of great transportation options and education. Like, there's just so much that the region has to offer. And again, that's sort of that's on the litany of reasons that we chose to come to Arlington. And so I agree with what everyone else is saying, which is that I think in the current state of affairs, does it make a difference whether you're sitting in Arlington or Boise, Idaho? Probably not, right? But if we look ahead and hopefully a year or two or whatever the time frame is for some sense of normalcy to return, I think that will shift, and all the things that attracted people to the region originally will resume. And hopefully we'll continue to see an influx of organizations who are seeking tech talent, and we'll continue to build that tech ecosystem in the region.
All right, so we only have just a few more minutes. Let me just wrap up with a question that probably is going to engender too much comment, but we'll just go around the horn rather quickly. But let's give the outlook for the next 5 years. So we have in our scorecard, Washington made it up to number 2. Let's put it in these terms: is in 5 years, is Washington still going to be number 2? And I mean that in a good point. I mean, are we going to still see this major momentum? We have some other markets on our heels. New York's there, Toronto, Boston. Is that momentum strong enough? Are you decidedly positive about where we're going to be in 5 years, and anything you may want to throw out there that you think might be interesting that we'll see in the next 5 years? Yeah, Steve, I want to throw it to you.
Yep, I'm very positive the next 5 years. I think, we reached this point somewhat doing it as a region individually, and now as we're starting to actually see the value of acting as a region, and again, we're talking the region of Northern Virginia. If you actually get the super region of DC and Maryland working together, I think we are unstoppable from a talent development standpoint because of the number of universities, colleges in this area, and the quality of life that offer. There's so many options of how and where people can live in this larger region that I think we will really be competitive, not just in the United States, but globally.
I ought to probably put a shout out to your white paper that was just released, I think last month too. I meant to mention that on this call, but people may want to take a look at that. It looks really, I have not read it, but it looks really compelling, but nice work. Liza, are we going to close the brain drain, by the way, too?
I have to agree with Steve. Mason, for example, is the largest tech talent producer in the Commonwealth. We just welcomed this year, in the middle of a pandemic, the largest class ever. So we're at 39,000 students, even in the middle of a pandemic. We don't see that changing, especially with the significant influx of resources and our ability to accommodate 15,000 more tech students. So I'm excited about that. And also the work that we're doing with all our sibling institutions in the Commonwealth, working with Nova, with UVA, with Virginia Tech, with Marymount, GW, to build an inclusive economic ecosystem in the Arlington and Northern Virginia area that will be a beacon and an attraction for more companies and more startups. So I only say we're going up.
They're making your job easy for you, Brian, right?
It's always got its challenges. It just depends on your perspective on the time and place. But I would agree. I mean, again, I would agree. I think, again, like when I think about this from sort of a broader tech community perspective, there are markets that have been sort of synonymous with tech talent for a long time, but there's a finiteness to those locations, whether you talk about sort of the ceiling for compensation growth or real estate, and so I think we've even seen within Amazon, businesses are starting to diversify from a location perspective. And our HQ2 project was an extensive year-long research endeavor where we looked really closely at national markets, and the DC metro area in Arlington specifically was the one out of, I think it was 252 that stood out the most when it came to sort of the tech talent available in the region, quality of life factor, sort of all the things we were considering. And so I have to think that other organizations, we're already seeing other organizations take notice of that, but I think they will continue to take notice of that. And as sort of the combination of availability of people resources and space resources in other regions becomes more limited, we'll probably start to see some of that accelerate in the coming years. But obviously that's all speculation too.
Carolyn, go ahead.
Yes, I can you hear me? Yes, so I definitely think what you're seeing is the past 2.5 to 3 years, instead of universities competing against each other and the contractors competing against each other and the counties competing against each other, there has been a unity of people coming together and collaborating as a region in unprecedented ways that have had great progress in terms of laying this foundation over the past 2 to 3 years that I think is just absolutely going to continue. And I absolutely believe that over the next 5 years, you're going to see that this is a great place for all types of people of all ages, of all backgrounds to come and thrive in this community. And we will be at the top 3 markets, you know, in the country. And we are very different than New York. We are very different than Austin, and we are very different than California. And what we forget, whether it's good or bad, is we are the hub for the government for the country. And so for spouses and other people who are coming, you know, in terms of, you know, having stability and career trajectory for the whole unit of a family instead of just the individual, there's a lot that offers, you know, for the community. So yeah, I think it's only going to continue to get better. And there's been a lot of collaboration and a lot of people working together. In my opinion, I've lived here 25 years. For the first time in the past 3 or 4 years, it's an entity with everybody working together instead of bifurcated. And I think that will deliver results. And I honestly think winning Amazon coming from an HQ2 is a huge catalyst to that. And just more great things are going to come from that.
Yeah, I would agree with you. We're going to wrap things up. I think that's a pretty resounding approval for the region and its future for technology. I mean, you go on a lot of these webinars, and inevitably a lot of the conversation will revert to, well, what do we need to do to change to compete? What do we have to get our stuff to get together? But the tone of that conversation, I think, is decidedly different. And so I want to thank all of you for being with us today. I want to thank our audience. And if you have any questions, I think we're going to get those via email and we can respond to you. But thanks so much for joining us, everybody. And I'll just hand it back to whoever who's controlling this thing. But thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you, Ian, and thank you, Telly. Thank you, our panelists and everyone for attending. Please be sure to check out Arlington Economic Development's website for future events virtually and hopefully in the near future in person. We'll have a lot more of these sort of seminars and webinars for you all to enjoy. So with that, I'll wrap things up, and everyone have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.